What up, Screen Fiends? I'm GB, and you're tuned in to Headz TV, where we like to discuss all the wonderful things appearing on your movie and your TV screens. In this episode, I'm going to give my review of Preacher Season 1, Episode 2, titled C. Now, I know in the other video that I made, I said it was a review, and it wasn't really a review. It was really more of me talking about the show in general, because for some reason I was trying not to give anything away. But Season 1 is a year old now. Season 2 is about to start, so I can safely assume if you're watching these videos that you've seen the episodes already. So I'm just going to talk. I'm not even going to filter or hold back spoilers from this point on. Now, because I feel, even though I posted the video, I feel like I didn't do a very good job at giving a review. It was more of a discussion on the show as opposed to a review. So I'm going to briefly talk about things that I didn't talk about from the first episode. And hopefully I don't confuse you at all. But the majority of this video is about episode 2. Alright, now, we do get an actual synopsis for this episode, but once again, they're very sparse with their synopsis, but I think that was only for the first 2 episodes because they didn't want to give anything away. And honestly, the first 2 are better watched back to back because they're really more like one long episode, but they split it into, I guess it's better for money making purposes or whatever, the flow of the season. 10 episodes sounds better than 9, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, all right, so the synopsis of C is Jesse tries to be a good preacher, it's in quotes too, not knowing that a mysterious duo is after him. Okay, so let me just talk about the first season, just real quick. First off, the opening scene in the first episode is amazing. You don't know what's going on, but the like comet thing shooting through the cosmos until it gets to Earth is amazing. Then it goes into the African Catholic priest, and it explodes, right? That was awesome. So what that creature is, and I'll probably do a whole video just about that creature, is Genesis. And what Genesis is I believe it's the first child, maybe not the first, but it's definitely a child of a demon and an angel. Now, I think it's the first and only ever in creation, and it's one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, whatever. So that's the creature, and if you listen to it, it's a baby. If you listen to it as it's soaring through outer space, it's crying, right? So it's a little baby still. And it then after it tries to get into the African priest, it goes to like a pagan church ritual thing they show later, and it goes into I forgot what the guy calls it, but whatever their priest, their leader is, it goes into them, doesn't work, explodes just like the African priest. And then you see on a news footage later on in that first episode that it went into some Tom Cruise, he's not the leader of Scientology, but that's who everybody, I guess, really worships from Scientology. Not so much the actual leader, I guess. I don't know. So it goes into Tom Cruise and it explodes Tom Cruise, which I love. Okay, so that's what we're dealing with. That's the supernatural entity. Now the duo that is after Jesse, we don't know that they're after Jesse till the very end of the first episode, but that duo, they're angels, and we'll get into that. I think in episode 3 they start to explain that. So they're angels that were tasked with babysitting the Genesis, okay? And now that Genesis escaped, however he did, we'll get into that later. That's what they're after. So that just gets you up to speed on that. And all right, there we go. Now, Jesse tries to be a good preacher. So at the end of the first one, you see in the first one that he's at conflict with being a preacher in the first episode. You kind of get a sense that he wants to be good, he wants to do good, he wants to follow in his father's footsteps, who we see through brief flashbacks that he was also a preacher, probably of the same town, I believe so. So you see he wants to be that, but he's bad. We don't know why yet. Even at the end of the first season, you don't really get a full picture of Jesse's past. We'll probably get to that in season 2. But we know that he was with Tulip and some guy. I think his name was Danny or something. And they were basically criminals. They went across the country and just committed various crimes. Now, Jesse does allude to certain things of his past. Cassidy asks him if who he was trained by, was he trained by his father or whatever, and he says no, somebody else trained him. So he alludes to his past, where after his father died, obviously his upbringing wasn't too good at that point. I'm not going to get into the comic and stuff now because they haven't divulged this stuff on the show. So I'm going to spoil stuff from the show, but I won't pull too much from the comics like I do with The Walking Dead. All right? Okay. So Jesse's trying to be a good preacher. So we start the episode off with him. I'm sorry. You know what? I'll talk about that at the end. So we start the episode off with Jesse, and he's baptizing everybody, or rebaptizing them, trying to save everybody, trying to be a good preacher, and not fully understanding what happened to him at the end of the last one when Genesis went inside of him. Okay? Now, he administered power, but didn't know he was administering it. When he told that guy to be brave, be honest, and open his heart to his mother, and then the guy goes to his mother and cuts his heart out, that's Jesse's power. Jesse's power is he can bend anyone's will to his own. So he can make anybody do whatever he wants. The problem is it's not him that has the power. It's the baby, Genesis, inside of him. It's a baby. It doesn't understand things. So it takes everything literal. So it doesn't understand the figurative meaning of open your heart. And it makes the guy literally open his heart. Jesse shows this again later when he goes after the pedophile. And he tells the pedophile to forget her. And instead of just forgetting that one girl, it seems like he forgets a whole slew of girls. Maybe every her that's in his life. And then again, when he goes to... I'll get to that in the next episode. Yeah. All right. So that's how we have Jesse basically being a good preacher and trying to do the right thing. And he's also learning about this power and learning that this power can help him be good, or so he thinks. It can help him be a good preacher or a better preacher or the type of preacher that he wants to be. So, that's awesome. Now, he's still struggling. Lots of demons. You can tell the way that Dominic Cooper plays the role of Jesse is you can see the torture in him. He plays it so well where you never has to speak about it. You already get a sense of who he is, the torment that he's going through. So, to fight these demons, he gets drunk. We see that in the first episode when he fights that, forgot the dude's name, breaks his arm and all that. Big, tough dude, too. That was awesome. A great scene. So we see that he likes to drown his sorrows away. So in this one, him and Cassidy are getting drunk. He passes out. And then the two angels, the mysterious duo, so to speak, comes to the church. We saw that them arrive at the church at the end of last episode. But now they come into the church and they try to do this ritual to get Genesis out of Preacher without harming him. He's passed out drunk on the floor. They do this weird ritual, sing a song. It doesn't work. I guess because they were the caretakers, this was a song that Genesis knew. I'm not really sure. So they do this ritual, and Genesis doesn't come out. So then they're about to cut Jesse up. Like, these guys are nuts. They try to do it the normal way, but that doesn't work. So they whip out the chainsaw, and they're getting ready to cut Genesis out of him. But Cassidy shows up, beats the piss out of the two guys, kills them, and disperses of the bodies. Cassidy is the man. I love him. It's hard to say who my favorite characters, because Jesse, Tulip, and Cassidy, I love them so much. They're so awesome. So then that's really Cassidy's story for the whole episode is he fights them, and then he disperses of the body. He has to wait till nighttime and all that. He's a vampire, so interesting. And I think he hides himself and the bodies under the church until the nighttime, and that's why the girl who is in love with Jesse, that's why she says, it smells like dead bodies here. I'm pretty sure it smells like something died in here. I'm pretty sure that's what happened. But I don't think they really make that 100% clear. And I just watched the episode too, but I don't recall seeing him drag them under or whatever. And then he buries the bodies. But lo and behold, at the very, very end of the episode, we see that the duo is not dead and they're still alive. But this is before we know that they're angels. So knowing now that they're angels, it starts to make sense that they can keep coming back after they die. But at this point in the show, we don't know that. So that's awesome. All right. So, and then we have Tulip. And Tulip's story in this episode is still the same. Her trying to get Jesse back to join her. Why? We don't know. Obviously, Tulip is obsessed with Jesse in some way. We don't really get a full sense of it if it's about a criminal partner or a relationship or both. We get a sense that it's both, that she's in love with Jesse and she misses the good times, the good old days of running wild with Jesse, right? On road trips, wreaking havoc across the country. But we get a different dynamic to her. In the first episode, we see that she's tough, hard, just totally gangster in her whole, everything she does in the first episode has a gangster to it. Even something as simple as painting her nails, she's doing it while planning a crime. She's just awesome. But in the second episode, we get more of a sense of her smarts and her wit and just how crafty and tactical she is. So by the end of the first two episodes, we really understand that Tulip is a force to be reckoned with. And we kind of understand why Jesse is so reluctant to get back with her, because she's obviously a destructive force, Yeah, so love that. And then we're going to end the episode with, she kidnaps Jesse, whatever. It's all part of her game, But then we get Jesse and Arseface is his name in the comic, but Eugene. They call him Eugene in the comic too, but he's mostly Arseface. Then we get him, trying to talk to Preacher and explain to him that, he didn't really help him. He lied. And I think that kind of hurts Jesse a little bit because, he wants to feel like he's being a good preacher and doing right by the people, Yeah, so, and then finally he goes to the girl's house, which was Eugene's victim. If you don't know what happened to Eugene, they explain it later in the show, but like I said, I'm not going to hold back spoilers here, so I'm just going to let it go. So what happened with Eugene is he was in love with this girl, and it's different from the comics, but there was a problem with the girl, and I think they made a suicide pact or something like that, and she got put in a coma, and he tried to blow his own head off and failed. And that's why his face looks like that. He put the shotgun in his mouth. They explain it, do a better job in the show, and we'll get to that when we get to that episode. But just to give you some context, so then when Preacher's in the room with that girl who's like comatose, and he touches her hand, he's like, open your eyes. We're going to see she's going to open her eyes. But once again, Genesis doesn't understand the literal meaning of things. Like figurative or whatever. He only understands the literal. I'm sorry. So you say open your eyes, it's open your eyes. Not, come back to life, be your old self, So Jesse is going to have to find a way to word things the way he wants them done. And I don't believe in the whole first season he doesn't learn this. So this will probably be a season 2 experience for him, I guess. Maybe he does learn it by the end. I don't know. We'll get to that. But, so now by the end of the second episode, not only do we understand Jesse, Tulip, and Cassidy a little bit better, we understand Genesis, well, at least the power behind Genesis a little bit, and that somebody's after him. So, it's a really good 2 episodes to binge. And we also get introduced to, I believe his name is Odin Kincannon. He owns this meatpacking plant. He's like the local gangster. He's like the local tough. He runs the town, basically. Everyone's in his pocket. Where everyone works for him, he's the man. And we get introduced to him in a great scene where he's like pressing these people to sell the land. And he's got all these like tough guy looking dudes behind him. And then they finally sell. And he's like, all right then. And you think they're getting up to go have coffee or something. Then they get up. The tough guys come, start moving furniture, and then all of a sudden a bulldozer takes the house out. It's like within minutes of them signing over their land, Kincannon already has the place demolished. Like, it's pretty awesome. All right, yeah, so I should have talked about this first, but I'm going to do it last. The opening scene, which I love when shows are creative and they give us stuff out of context, especially when they do it in the very opening or the very end of an episode. It gives you just something to think about, right? So when you first see this, you have no idea what's going on, and they don't explain this till almost the end of the season. But we'll talk about it a tiny bit here. I'm gonna do maybe some topical videos about Genesis and the cowboy from the beginning. So we get the cowboy in the beginning, and the girl's sick, and he's got to go to a town. The name of the town is Ratwater. If you notice, Cassidy calls the booze he drinks Ratwater. The name on the label of Jesse's bottle is Ratwater. There's tons of little Easter eggs, and little connections all the way through. I could do a video just on that. I could do a video just on the billboard that somebody keeps changing in front of the church. They say all types of funny things. I don't want to get my channel flagged, so I'm not going to go into all the things because a couple of them are pretty vulgar, depending on how you take it. So we'll leave that at be. So we get the cowboy, and he meets these people, and then he sees people hanging on a tree, and he don't say no word. And you're like, what is going on? What does 1891 or 1881, whatever it is, what does this have to do with this show? And they do explain it later. What I will say in this episode, I'll save the bulk of that for another one. But what I will say about this episode is the cowboy he's a big character in the show, in the comic. He's a big character. And he's basically, I don't want to call him a villain, but he's an adversary of Preacher and Genesis. I'm sure we'll get more of that in season 2, obviously, but even in season 1, by the end of season 1, you understand a little bit more about him, and his whole dynamic. So his name is the All Saints Killer, I believe that's his name. No, the Saint of Killers, or the Killer of Saints, or something like that. We'll get to it in another episode. But he's basically, like I said, going to be like the antagonist, if you will, of the show. But Preacher is one of these types of shows where there's not really a clear-cut protagonist and antagonist. Everyone kind of rides that line of gray, and you can kind of understand most people's actions in this world. So season 2 was, to me, just as good as season 1. I mean, episode 2. Episode 2 was just as good as episode 1. The only thing I would say about them is, honestly, they should have just been one episode. It should have been 1 2-hour episode, and it would have been a 5 out of 5 if it was one episode, 1 and 2. But because they're separated, they lose points to me. The shows that are shrouded in mystery lose a few points to me. So, out of 5, I give this one the same pretty much I gave the first episode, like a 4.7-ish, 4.8-ish. But if you put them together, they'd be a perfect episode, honestly. Good stuff. So, like I said, I'm going to review the whole season 1. I know these reviews are strange and different from what I'm used to, but I'm not really used to going back and rewatching and then doing reviews. So, hopefully, as I go, these will be a little bit more streamlined and a little less all over the place. I feel like the second one was already better than the first one. But you guys let me know down below about my videos, the style, what I'm doing, anything at all. Critiques, complaints, call me an asshole, whatever you want. All criticisms are good criticisms in my book. Definitely comment on Preacher, the show as a whole, or just episode to episode, whatever you want to talk about. Want to talk about the books? Let's talk about the books. Whatever you want to do. Just sound off in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Always appreciate it. You guys have a fantastic day, and I will see you next time.